done low blows as well.
Yeah.
So Amir's guess was a leg lock, just because it seems more realistic. But
Yeah.
I'm going a little bit more broad, like ambitious, and saying like a RKO or like a suplex.
Okay, I'm gonna go with the attitude adjustment, and I'm not saying like full stand up, put him on the
Yeah.
shoulders, but I can absolutely see like a scrum where Draymond falls on the ground and then like just flip, just like grab someone and
Yeah.
knocks it. Like,
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another PTR podcast. Today, we're joined by a very special guest. So without further ado, let me get right into it. He's the analyst for Sportsnet covering the NBA, specifically the Raptors and the Raptors 905, and MLB, more specifically again with the Blue Jays. He's the host of the Raptors Talk Show with Will Liu and Jays Talk Plus on Sportsnet Radio. We're joined by Blake Murphy of Sportsnet today.
How's Blake? What's going on?
How's it going,
good.
Blake?
How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Good.
Sorry, this is how excited I am to join you guys. Talking right over top of you right out of the gate.
No, it's all good. All good. We appreciate you. First off, I just have a question before we get into anything, just like a fun thing. Do you ever get vacation? Because when I messaged you the first time, it went Jays season straight into the Raptors season. So we're just wondering about this.
Yeah, so if the Jays had not made the playoffs, I would have had a little bit of time. But the Jays basically got eliminated, and then the Raptors show was launching like a week after that, and we were doing like practice shows and podcasts and stuff like that. So I have not had a vacation in a little while right now. Last year, it worked out a little better. Like the Jays ended with enough time. I went to Cuba for like 4 days before Raptors started back up, but no such luck this year.
And it doesn't help when they barely make the playoffs and then do that.
That's the thing, is like if they go to the ALCS, it's worth it. If they get bounced in the wild card, it's like, well, come on, do me a favor here, guys.
Yeah. All right, we'll get right into it. We'll get off with the NBA stuff. So before we go strictly team basis or general conversations, before I even get into this, everybody check out the Raptors show, because Blake, along with Will Liu, had Commissioner Adam Silver on, and it was a great convo. Everything will be linked down below as well. But off the bat, we're about like a month or so in. What's your initial reaction to the early part of the season so far as a whole?
Yeah, just NBA wide. I think it's great, man. I think it's really wide open. I think if you look in the Western Conference, there are like 10 teams who, if they didn't make the playoffs this year, it would be a big disappointment. You've got probably 4 or 5 teams that, because of age or because of expectation or because of how the salary cap is changing in the coming years for high income teams, you've got like 4 or 5 teams that are championship or bust. And I think what that does is, first of all, it gets you trades like James Harden in October, November, but it also means it should be a pretty spicy trade deadline. It means that every night, I mean, you guys are West Coast based, so you guys get the are getting a really steady diet of good primetime games. For us here, it's certainly worth staying up. And then the Eastern Conference, it's a little bit more familiar. At the top, like, we know who Boston is. We have an idea who Philadelphia is outside of what Nick Nurse is changing and Tyrese Maxey's ascension. We know who the Bucks are as they figure out the Dame element here. So it's kind of like in the East, we know everything, but each team is different enough to still be interesting this year. Sorry, cat in the way.
No worries.
and the West is just so loaded. So I think those parts are good. And then I think, even the bottom part of the East, even if you don't really believe in the teams and their ability to make a dent in the playoffs, there are still some fun teams trying to figure it out, like Orlando and Indiana, who have been, really nice surprises this year. So I think it's shaping up to be a very fun season, and certainly a really spicy trade deadline come January, February.
Because, when we did our season preview in the West, we had like 11 teams that could potentially make the playoffs. So it was tough to even take one out because of the play-in process. And then on the East, I think we came up with the conclusion that we had 2 contenders. Now, definitely Philly is shutting us up a little bit here, because I'm like, and now granted, at the time, James Harden was not traded, so we don't know what was going to happen there. But even the fact that Tyrese Maxey stepping up was we kind of pictured it, but not to the level that he has at the moment.
Yeah, and look, they're going to be able to. We'll see what they end up actually doing, but they picked up some assets in that James Harden trade, like future draft picks that they could turn around and they could trade for some extra help as well. So I think with the 76ers, everyone's right to be a little skeptical until we see it in the playoffs, because they've been bounced in the second round however many years in a row. But Nick Nurse we know a little bit better of a playoff resume than his predecessors there in Doc Rivers and Brett Brown. And then, yeah, I mean, the Maxey thing and what, like, honestly, what else they could add, they could turn around at the deadline here and attach a draft pick or two to a sizable salary and bring in, you know, another Tobias Harris type to kind of round that thing out and add a little bit extra defensive punch. So, yeah, I'm with you guys on the let's wait to see it to the playoffs element of it, but I think they could be dangerous, including at the deadline.
You alluded to it earlier. We'll just get to it right now. The Harden trade. So before the Harden trade itself, are you a fan? Because like from the outside looking in, we love the NBA compared to the other leagues, especially the NHL, because it's hard to move salaries and player movement. But to a certain extent, right? Because like Harden pretty much throws a hissy fit, goes wherever he wants after Houston, essentially. And then he's like, oh, I want to be here. Then, oh, I want to be here. Oh, now I'm a Sixer. Now I want to be a Clipper. Gets whatever he wants. Are you a fan of just player movement in general? Because the Dame trade, that's what we're fine with, because we want to see big time movement. Kevin Durant last year in a way, but like the James Harden part, I think kind of goes like, oh, why the player power is too much. So what's your thoughts on that?
Look, I'm for the player empowerment movement in general, shorter contracts, you know, max guys having a little bit more say. I don't love the like I'm only gonna go to this team element of it, because I still am not entirely clear why teams respect that. Like if Dame says I only want to go to Miami, I like that Portland at least dealt him to Milwaukee and took the best offer. You know, the Harden thing's a little different because there weren't very many teams still willing to pay what it would take for Harden. So, you know, I think it makes for interesting storylines. I think this stuff is probably better off in July happening rather than happening in season. Certainly makes the Clippers more fascinating this year. And honestly, there are more restrictions coming in the new CBA signed last offseason that'll kind of slowly work their way in over the next little bit. That'll make it harder for teams to do deals like this Harden deal. So it might resolve itself anyway. For now, it's like I think it's mostly fine and entertaining. James Harden has just like hit that button too many times himself.
Yeah, the drama is fun because Kevin Durant, who expected him to get traded mid-season, and Kyrie last year, right?
Yeah, they were really good too.
Because the NHL is boring in that sense.
Yeah.
But
and like how like the Clippers are interesting. They have Kawhi and Paul George and Westbrook, obviously, but like this has turned the Clippers into, and especially because they lost their first handful of games, like last night's Clippers game, they're in a down to the wire battle with the Rockets. And suddenly that's like a must see fourth quarter because, you know, they are so fascinating and they can't figure it out yet. And so, yeah, I think it's good for the entertainment value. It's just, you know, James Harden's legacy is, especially if he doesn't end up winning a championship, like this is going to be it. And individual players have to be aware of that a little bit.
All right, so going from one trade target to another, Zach LaVine might be available. So I just want to know, like, who are your three teams that would be the best fit for LaVine?
Yeah, I mean, obviously teams that need a little offense in the backcourt. Zach LaVine is, you know, he's having a down year this year, but generally speaking, he's pretty efficient on high volume. He's a decent enough secondary playmaker. You don't want him as your lead guard. That type of guy fits a lot of spaces. I think anytime something like this comes up, you have to look at the Miami Heat because they're always involved with everyone. They have, you know, a couple of bigger contracts in Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Kyle Lowry that you could work to make the salary cap math work. And then you just figure out, you know, the picks element. The Lakers are always a threat for a guy like that because they don't really care about the long-term money. And, you know, teams like LA and Miami, because of, you know, the Lakers market and the allure of the Lakers and just how well run the Heat are, they have been able to survive for a really long time, always trading all their picks away. So those two teams are always in there. The one team that I'd be a little interested in, and it doesn't really fit where their weakness is, but if you drop Zach LaVine into Dallas, look, they're the top offense in the league and they're like a mediocre defense. It doesn't help with that, but like that might be the best offense we've ever seen. If you can drop in another shooter around Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving there and another guy with kind of scoring punch. And I mentioned the Mavs, not necessarily because I think it's a good fit, but I do think that they're another team that is going to be pretty aggressive this year because how long is Kyrie going to stay at this level? Do you have to make Luka Doncic happy by winning at some point during this contract? I think they're probably feeling the pressure a little bit.
All right, so now we're a month into the season. What would you say your finals prediction is?
Ooh. Unfortunately, I think Boston is the favorite to come out of the East right now. I don't like to say that. I picked Milwaukee preseason, but I have been really unimpressed with Adrian Griffin so far. And I think, the defensive limitations they have there now without Drew Holiday, and now that Brook Lopez he's still blocking like 6 and 7 shots every night, but he's like 35, 36. I'm less confident in their defense. So I think Boston is probably the favorite of the East. And honestly, I thought maybe the Suns would come out, but we're not going to see Beal, Booker, and Durant together for at least another 3 weeks. They still haven't played a game together, so I've got to downgrade them just a little bit. And I think it's hard to move Denver off the top spot. They're the defending champs, and they've started 9-3 here, even without Jamal Murray playing very much. So I think the Nuggets got to be the favorite to come out of the West still right now.
All right, so I'm a Raptors fan, and you cover
Okay.
the Raptors, and I'm very confused because I don't know if I should buy in or, just be like, okay, you should rebuild, trade pieces. So what is your reaction to the Raptors season? Are they exceeding expectations? Are they what you expected, or are they a little bit worse?
Yeah, they're about what I expected. I picked them for 40 wins before the season, so them sitting at 5-7 right now is kind of within what I thought. I thought they'd be a pretty good defense, a really good transition offense, and I didn't think they would struggle to score this much in the half court, but I thought they would struggle to score. They right now have the worst half court offense since like Sam Hinkie was tearing down the 76ers back in 2015. So that's not great. That's worse than I expected. But overall, 5-7. Playing tough against some good teams, having a couple stinkers. That's about what I expected. It's about what I expect for a 500-ish team. More to your point, though, about what is the direction, what is the plan. I'm with you. I'm still a little uncertain on what that is until Pascal Siakam signs an extension. I'm going to assume they're listening on him. It just, otherwise, why wouldn't you have the extension done at this point? But I think from a Raptors fan perspective, you can at least, if you're talking about buy-in, no, I'm not buying in that this group is going to click enough to make a playoff run this year. But I think what you're seeing from Scotty Barnes, you can definitely buy in on. He's showing a ton of growth. He's showing some, he's having games where he looks like not just a star, but a superstar. His stat line is that of an all-star player. So that's really exciting. I think you're in pretty good shape to buy in on Scotty Barnes' future. But I don't think the Raptors know yet, which direction they're going to go and what the timeline they're working on is.
My biggest concern for the Raptors is you let Lowry go for next to nothing. Fred VanVleet's gone for nothing. And now your biggest asset in Siakam might go for nothing.
OG.
And OG Anunoby as well. So
Gary Trent Jr.
So
Yeah.
I'm just just can you pick something and do it, because we can't let these guys go for free, because these are genuinely good NBA players that could help people contend.
Yeah, and I can understand it more with Kyle and when Mark and Serge left, or Kawhi and Dan. You got a championship out of that, right? You can't be well, we lost them for nothing. No, you lost them after winning a championship. I don't care. But these guys now, yeah, they misplayed the Fred situation. Whether there were good offers at the trade deadline or just mediocre offers, they obviously thought they would be able to at least sign and trade him. They weren't able to do that. They are heading into an offseason here with 3 key free agents. And look, that was what last offseason looked like. And Gary Trent kind of did them the favor of picking up his player option. But they were still in a spot where they had to slightly overpay Jakob Poeltl, because Poeltl's camp could sit there and be like, well, you just gave up a first round pick for us. And if you don't keep us, you don't have significant cap space anyway. So that's kind of the situation they could put themselves in this summer, where they don't have a lot of leverage with any of those 3 guys. So I'm with you. I think they need to make a choice on it. OG, I'm willing to be patient on, because there are these weird CBA rules about what you can and can't offer a guy in an extension. And it just makes sense for OG to wait until the offseason. But the Pascal and Gary things, those could be resolved right now with extensions, or they could be resolved right now with trades. I don't think you want to go into the offseason with all of these guys as UFAs.
Yeah, no, to finish out the Raptors thing, I think before the season, we'll get your opinion in a second as well. I think, because obviously him being the bigger Raptor fan, and I do like the Raptors, because those Nick Nurse teams minus Tampa and last year were pretty fun to watch, in my opinion. And but at the same time, I'm like, okay, now they need to rebuild, because Kevin Durant was out of the picture at that point. I'm like, okay, if you're going to trade for a star to contend, I'm like, okay, it makes sense to get Kevin Durant. Dame, I was like iffy because I'm like, I don't think he's the guy. Even if you got Dame, you're gonna lose pieces, and then you will be probably like similar, like how Philly kind of is before they kind of took a step, I guess. And then yeah, then I think we said rebuild for sure. Now, were you on that stage, or were you like, no, they should go after names, for example? In this case, it linked to Zach LaVine somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean toward, reorienting things around the Scotty Barnes timeline. That also includes, OG, because OG's not old yet either. Um, I would probably reorient in that direction. I just like, even a Zach LaVine thing, if you can work out a deal where, like, let's say it's Gary Trent, Chris Boucher, and Thad, right? Like, that makes the money work. And this isn't the case, but let's say all Chicago cares about is getting off that contract. Well, you do that, and your team is definitely much better. Zach LaVine fits in with where this team's holes are. But does it make you a contender in the East? Probably not on the level of Boston and Philadelphia and Milwaukee. You're definitely better, but not like title, not favorites to come out of the East better. And then you're looking at a spot where Zach LaVine, Pascal, OG, and Scotty, if you keep Pascal and OG, which you'd obviously do in a scenario where you're trying to win now, those guys take up almost all of your salary cap together, and Jakob Poeltl. So you don't have a lot of ability to get better from there. So I mean, like, I would enjoy the basketball, and it would be entertaining if they added a piece and they went more win now. But, if I'm in their shoes, I think I'm looking more toward, well, Scotty Barnes could potentially be a star, and the only way to build properly around that is going to be to take a step back and get some extra assets.
Sorry, last thing with the Raptors before we move on. Masai Ujiri, do you think he kind of overthinks and overdoes trades? Because there were rumors that OG was available for 4 first-round picks, or the Atlanta Hawks gave an offer for Pascal Siakam, for example. And do you think he's trying to do that whole Kawhi finesse trade or the Norman Powell trade that he did, and he's just kind of like overdoing it at this point, and then it ends up letting Fred walk for free, for example?
I don't know if it's overthinking or overdoing it necessarily. Like, we've heard for a long time that Masai values his guys really highly, and they can be a frustrating team to trade with because, they want to win that trade. They don't want to do lateral move trades. We hear this in reporting from national reporters sometimes, that other teams get a little fed up with it or whatever. I'm not in Masai's head, so I don't know if it's an overthink or overestimating or whatever. It's also like, I'm sure a part of it is staying the course when he first took over. Like, obviously he did the Bargnani trade, he did the Rudy Gay trade, but not trading Kyle when he was tearing things down ended up being what kind of put them on the path to a championship. They got good, and then they got really good, and then they hit a wall, but then they were able to make that next step. Now, those teams were like 55, 60 win teams. They were not 41 win teams, so it's different. But I do think that a part of their philosophy is like, they just don't have the stomach for another Tampa season. So I think they want to try to stay reasonably competitive as they're doing this, which is difficult. And that's how you end up, I think, putting a high price tag on Fred VanVleet, because you think you could, in some scenarios, re-sign him and be a 45 win team. I think they misplayed that one, but whether it's overthinking or overestimating or whatever, that much I couldn't say. I just have not agreed with some of the moves as far as I'll go on that one.
Okay. Moving on to the Lakers, because I'm obviously a Laker fan here. What's your early season reactions? Obviously, they are kind of not doing what I expected them to do, but do you still believe that they are, I guess, a championship contender? Because last year they did start 2-10. Now, granted, that was a Russell Westbrook team first. Early start, I'm not a fan of Darvin Ham at the moment. Even in general, last year I had question marks. But yeah, your reaction to the Lakers, do you still believe that they're like a top 5, top 7 team and possible championship contender in the league?
Well, they're 3-0 in the in-season tournament, so they're definitely an in-season tournament champion contender here. Look, I think they've had, I like their offseason fine, given the constraints they were facing. Neither Cam Reddish nor Taurean Prince have been as good as expected. I know we're recording this Saturday. Reddish had a really good defensive night last night, but Taurean Prince hasn't really, hit his stride yet. Some of the whole, Rui's not quite as good as he was down the stretch last year. Christian Wood hasn't. Gabe Vincent has done almost nothing. And I know he's hurt now, but They've had some stuff not go their way yet, and I think they'll continue to figure that out. And like I said, kind of with the Zach LaVine question, the Lakers are always going to find a way to trade pieces or add at the deadline. Some clutch client will demand a trade to LA or something like that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the biggest thing for the Lakers is LeBron still looks like LeBron. And as long as you have that, you've got a chance.
You mentioned the in-season tournament. So, what was your reaction before the season when there were talks about it, and then when it became official, and then now what it's been so far?
Yeah, I like it. Initially, I don't like I am fine with them trying new things. I understand them trying new things. It's it's good for the long-term health of the league, even if some stuff doesn't work out. Now this one is, I'm not much of a soccer fan, so the FA Cup kind of appeal I didn't really get necessarily. I haven't loved what the G League has done, where they have kind of one season and then a G League Cup and then another season in the actual playoffs. But I mean, so far so good. The in-season tournament nights have been really exciting. Some of the courts don't look that good, but some of them do. Some of the jerseys are good. The players seem to care at least a little bit. So I'm here for it. The biggest thing for me, honestly, is going to be when we get to those semifinals and finals and they're on neutral courts in Vegas. If those games are good and the vibe there is cool and like people show up and the court looks good and everything, that's going to be what sells this thing. So, if the Charlotte Hornets beat the Orlando Magic in the finals of the in-season tournament and 8,000 people are there and the court looks bad, no, I don't think anyone will care next year. But, if it's LeBron's Lakers and, Joel Embiid's 76ers and it's a really good championship game and it looks awesome on TV and the crowd's good in Vegas, like I think people will tie memories of that. You really can't do anything to build it other than have a really good semifinals and finals.
Yeah, I mean, well, there were issues yesterday with the Raptors court apparently, but
yeah, it's not the first one that we've heard is too slippery,
yeah,
and I wonder if that's just like they didn't even get preseason reps in on those, so like they're not worked in at all. I don't know
yeah,
how much an average court needs to be worked in first, but we heard that in Dallas. Luka Doncic was complaining about the court, I think, and there was someone else last night. I'm drawing a blank, but someone else outside of Toronto, in addition to Jaylen Brown, was saying something similar.
yeah. No, we're soccer fans, so at first we were like, okay, we don't want to see more games, but then when we found out that it's included in the regular season minus the finals, I'm like, okay, we could live with it, and we'll see how it goes. Because the All-Star game, which we'll get into now in a second, remember like when they did the whole playground rules, it worked the first year, I think the third year. Now it's like they're back to the original way.
Like that casualness.
Yeah,
Is back,
casualness is back. But with the All Stars, and now speaking of that, you talked about it. I think you didn't ask Adam Silver this when I was watching you guys pod, but the USA versus World All Star. Do you think that could bring back the competitiveness possible?
I mean, maybe it's something where like the game is certainly international enough where the rosters would be pretty balanced and maybe even tilted against the US. So I don't know that the NBA would want to do it unless the US is a heavy favorite to win. Like if you're going up against Doncic and Jokic and Giannis and Embiid, like I don't know. I guess Embiid has declared for the US internationally now, but like yeah, that's a pretty loaded roster. Like that's maybe the three best players in the league. So yeah, I think it would be spicy. I think it would be interesting. I'd also be okay with like they just do a different format year to year. I think the important thing is as long as the 26 guys who make the All-Star game are the 26 All-Star. Like I would hate if it's US versus the world, and because of that, like someone who doesn't deserve to be on an All-Star team sneaks in because the world team needs a 13th guy or the US needs a 13th guy or whatever. I think you get your All-Stars and then you split it up however you think is fun that year. And I'd be fine with that rotating east-west, captains, USA versus the world, whatever. It's not a serious game, so whatever you got to do to keep it fresh.
All right, so there's been a lot of drama with Draymond Green recently, putting Rudy Gobert in a chokehold. So first, I just want to get your overall reaction to that. And then my second question is, what WWE move you think Draymond's going to do? Because he already did a punch on Jordan Poole. He stomped Sabonis.
He's done a flying knee.
He's done low blows as well.
Yeah.
So Amir's guess was a leg lock just because it seems more realistic.
Yeah.
But I'm going a little bit more broad, like ambitious and saying like a RKO or like a suplex.
Okay, I'm gonna go with the attitude adjustment, and I'm not saying like full stand up, put him on the
Yeah.
shoulders, but I could absolutely see like a scrum where Draymond falls on the ground and then like just flip, just like grab someone and
Yeah.
knocks. So like, I guess the technical term would be a fireman's carry. It wouldn't be the attitude adjustment without the big stand up and flip him. But yeah, some version of that when he's getting up from the ground to just flip someone over.
Um, One thing Adam Silver brought up, the expansion, and now obviously we're in the Vancouver area. Um, do you believe? Because in our heads we're like, okay, it seems like it's a lock that Vegas and Seattle are getting the expansion teams. In our opinion, do you
It seems
believe
that
that's
way, yeah.
yeah? Do you think Vancouver or Montreal will end up getting a team sometime down the line?
I mean, sometime down the line, sure. Like I could see a scenario where the league expands a little bit beyond 32. They'll have to be careful with that, but more teams is more money and bigger franchise fees and more games to sell to the TV networks. So I will never rule out anything that could make the NBA more money. I think if it was Vancouver or Montreal, it would only be one of them, and they probably have to compete with the league has made it a mission to expand into Mexico as well over the last little while. So there's going to be competition there, but I think Vancouver and Montreal both like they could both make a pretty compelling case. Like Montreal is even though they've never had an NBA team, like it's been a basketball hotbed for a long time. The Raptors do well when they go out there. They've produced some decent players, and then everyone knows the Grizzlies got a bad shake out there, and sure, maybe it wasn't the most profitable franchise, but also like they had poor ownership and poor management. And yeah, so I don't know. I would lean toward Vancouver over Montreal, I think, because I think Vancouver got a bad shake last time. But I'm also, I know I'm talking to two Vancouver guys, so maybe that's swaying my
Yeah.
opinion a little bit here.
No, because Vancouver, I think, though, to be honest, I think it could be a little tough just geographically. If Seattle's right there, then they might delay that and go Mexico City or Montreal.
Yeah.
But Vancouver will be fun because obviously in the NHL side of things, we have the whole Toronto Vancouver media rivalry. Bring
Yeah.
that back, Now he might have to make a decision.
Yeah. After China, to go back to hometown.
but yeah, no, I think that rivalry will be fun in terms of Canadian media again, because we already know the Toronto Vancouver media don't like each other in terms of
Yeah.
sports talk.
I mean, look, I lived in Vancouver for a year and was going to UBC, and I did the weird, I was blogging at Leafs Nation and Canucks Army at the same time, and it was not popular for me to try to toe the line and play both sides of that. So
Yeah.
I think everyone would have to dig in and pick Raptors or whatever the new Vancouver team would be, or Montreal for that matter.
All right, last thing before we get to the baseball side of things now. Your reaction just to how Canada basketball, men and women, especially recently with the men's performance, has I guess expanded currently. Elevated, I guess is the correct word, currently.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, this summer's World Cup was incredible. It's one of the most fun things I've ever, and I wasn't even covering it like directly. I was just kind of chipping in. But it was awesome. It was awesome as a fan, awesome as someone who's written about those teams for like a decade now. Really cool to see, the recognition throughout that not only was this, a big historical thing the men were doing, but like it was also, yeah, they're catching up to the women who have finished fourth in a World Cup before and gone to the Olympics a bunch of times. So it'll be really cool in Paris to see both of those teams. I assume the women are going to qualify. They're in a really good spot to qualify in February. So yeah, I think it'll be really, really fun. And then on the more broad Canada basketball side, like it's crazy that every year the press release comes out. It's like, yeah, Canada set a new record for how many non-American players this year. It's like 26 or 28 or something like that. And every year it gets bigger, and it just like you don't even clue in anymore when the Raptors are playing against the Canadian player because so many teams have them. It's great. It's one of those things where like, a true mark of progress is you don't even appreciate the progress day to day because it's just like, it's so everywhere in the NBA now. They're just Canadian players everywhere at the highest levels, Euro League, Euro Cup, all that stuff. So it's been a blast, and I would really, really like for some of that to carry over to Paris.
If USA sends the Avengers, is it still USA to beat?
Yeah. It's still USA to beat for the Olympics. And like, I know they came fourth in the World Cup, but that wasn't their A team. That wasn't their B team. Like I love Ant, but like they had a lot of holes beyond that. Ant and Mikal Bridges, but like some of the guys that were playing there are role players in the NBA. I think they're probably for 2024 going to send maybe an old team, but like a last dance style team. So yeah, it'll be the US to top off. And then we'll see who wins these last chance qualifying tournaments too, because there are going to be some really good European teams left out of the Olympics. So I don't even know how to like set the table beyond the US.
Yeah, because I think Canada's a big man away, really, to partner with Shea, in my opinion. As much as I love Kelly Olynyk and Dwight Powell, what they've been doing, but like someone like to go against a Joel Embiid or a Jokic or a Giannis, for example, it's just once they get that established, I think then Canada could be in the mix of like, what's the word?
Contending
Meddling
or
stuff
meddling,
like
yeah,
that.
meddling.
Yeah, I mean, look, the World Cup is even though the US didn't take their best team there, like the World Cup is the biggest tournament on the calendar and it's the most difficult to win. It's the longest. There are more chances to slip up. A lot of European and South American teams take that as the biggest event. Like that's bigger than the Olympics to a lot of countries, given the history of basketball, in the World Cup. So I think if you medal at the World Cup, yeah, you should feel pretty good. Like the goal should be to medal at the Olympics.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the MLB. So I just want to get your prediction from before beginning of the season because it's kind of obvious that like no one really predicted Texas Arizona World Series.
Yeah, I don't remember what my prediction was at the start of the season, but it wasn't that. I'm pretty sure I had the Braves in the finals. Maybe Braves Astros. I don't remember exactly. I remember being really high on the Braves, and then yeah, all the home runs in the world didn't help them out. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Like we'll see heading into this year. We obviously got to see where Shohei lands and stuff like that. But this is the fun and frustrating part about baseball playoffs is like you never know what's going to happen, but also like probably the best team doesn't always win. Unlike in basketball, where like you're pretty sure the best team won.
So your reaction, because it is the lowest rated World Series, and I'll take a little credit. 'Cause I thought Texas wasn't going to make it all the way, but I thought they were going to be better than people thought they were going to be. But your reaction to when people say, "Well, I'm like a casual fan," like, "Oh, I ain't going to tune into this." There's no real appeal to it. But when we're like arguing the other side about like, if you want to get into baseball, just watch baseball. It's still the World Series. Plus, there's actually an underdog story here, specifically from the Diamondback side of things, and
Yeah.
being the lowest rated. Yeah, your reaction to that.
Yeah, I don't really care about the ratings. Like I understand they're relevant for like the long-term health of baseball and TV money and stuff like that. But me as some like I don't know why a fan who is still watching would care how many other like I feel this way about wrestling ratings arguments too of like okay, well we already know the ratings don't capture every form of digital streaming and illicit ways of watching, which no one in Canada does because they have Sportsnet Plus, obviously. But there are other ways that traditional TV ratings can't capture, especially with the younger part of the audience. So I don't put a lot of stock into it. I like it. It does nothing to take my enjoyment away from the World Series if like 8.8 million people are watching it instead of like 9.4 million people.
All right, we're gonna get into the Blue Jays a little bit here, starting off with what happened beginning of the year. So Dalton Varsho got traded for Gabby Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. So our reaction was like, when we're watching through the season, like we're not mad that we got Varsho because he definitely helped, especially with the outfield defense. But like, was he really worth our number one prospect to give up?
It's tough. I mean, the Jays would still tell you yes. I understood it a little bit more when we thought Dalton Varsho was actually going to play some catchers still. Like the idea there was part of it was, well, you don't need to have like Tyler Heineman called up because Dalton Varsho can be your third catcher. We never saw it. And then obviously he had a pretty bad or pretty rough offensive season other than, finding his way into a home run here and there. I didn't, I understood the deal at the time. I love catching prospects and they never work out. So
Yeah.
the one they traded away being the guy that's going to work out is going to be really, really tough for me. I know Atkins or Shapiro said something like, well, you can't judge it until later down the line. I'm going to bet that 5 more years of Moreno control versus 3 more or 2 more of Varsho, that's still going to tilt in Arizona's favor. So, I mean, Varsho's a really nice piece and he'll be a part of this team the next couple of years, but it's hard to imagine that trade doesn't end up looking like one they regret at least a little bit.
Yeah.
I was thinking more like I understand why they did not trade Kirk because he had an all-star year, but I was like
He also
sell
didn't have
high.
as much trade value. Like from what I understand is like Moreno was the guy every team asked about,
Okay.
and they didn't like. I think they would have been fine with moving Kirk, but the value just wasn't there as much. I don't think teams around the league believed in his defense being as good as it was this year, even if they liked the bat.
Yeah, because I was like the speed was a huge factor for me as well. That was like the main reason why I'm like trade Kirk. His value is probably high now because of the All-Star, but yeah, I guess because the win now move, it made sense to trade Varsho, I guess.
It's
But
also hard not to regret right now because Moreno kind of helped the Diamondbacks for the World Series,
Yeah.
so it kind of makes it look worse than it actually is.
And he's really good. Like he had an
yeah,
awesome season. He was by far the best catcher in baseball at controlling the running game, which is like super important now that there's more base stealing and stuff. And then yeah, he's probably going to be like a guy who hits 280 regularly.
because sticking with the Jays overall season recap, just you don't have to like go into depth really because I know you're probably having flashbacks like, damn, I got to talk about this again. But say, cause same with us. But like couple things, obviously underwhelming. We know that. But do you believe this is the true Vladdy, or do you think he could still be like that 2021 mixed in 2022 Vladdy? And what do you expect him to do with the free agency? And John Schneider, do you believe him in as a manager? So just all that into one.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're right that it was underwhelming or disappointing. They didn't meet expectations. The expectation wasn't to sneak into the wild card and get bounced in 2 games again. It was to win the AL East and make some noise in the playoffs. So that's where the bar is again heading into this year. Certainly, Vlad is a part of that. Where I'm at on him, I don't think he's this year's version of that. Like I think when you show the level that he showed in 2021, even acknowledging where he played some of his games and things like that, there is a star bat in there. He didn't show it at all this year, and he didn't show it for most of 2022. So I don't think you can go into this season being like, Vlad's going to hit 40 home runs and hit 290 and knock in 120. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if that happens. I just think you have to, you probably set your expectations somewhere between 2021 and 2023 moving forward because he hasn't been that guy for 2 years now. Now, if he's that guy again, that shoots the Blue Jays a little further. If he's not, then yeah, you got to hit on these free agent things because you have 4 pretty key free agents on the position player side, and it's a really weak free agent class. The one thing I would say, other than Shohei, which we can all dream on, and I could sit here and make the business case to Rogers, but it's still going to be like $500 million at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The Jays do have some financial flexibility, and at a time when a lot of teams aren't sure what's happening with their television revenue because of Bally Sports and Diamond Sports running out of money and stuff like that, there are going to be some teams who need to shed payroll. And if you're the Blue Jays, you might be able to pick up a guy just by taking on his contract in trade or for a lower level prospect. So I've been kind of scouring some of these other teams' rosters too for like who makes like 10 or 15 million and is like an upgrade but not a star. That might end up being the kind of moves that they make. And that's a little underwhelming, but the whole free agent class is underwhelming. It's Shohei, Bellinger, and then a bunch of pitchers. But I think we'd all agree the Jays need a little more help on the offensive side.
Would you have paid Vlad before? Not after this year for sure. Like, would you have given him the long term, like Julio Rodriguez got?
Not the like $300 million deal. No, I mean, it's just so hard for a first baseman / DH to deliver on that, that he would have had to repeat 2021 another time for me to, lay out the 300 million or whatever it's going to cost. So I think this is one where they probably just ride out this season and then revisit it next time. Because if I'm Vlad, I'm not negotiating right now either, right? Like I'm not negotiating off my worst season.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's gonna go down a little more to the wire.
Very quick reaction to John Schneider as a manager.
He's fine. I really dislike the Barrios move.
Yeah.
There was the odd thing during the season. Obviously, they were a poor base running team. I don't know how much we blame that on the players versus the coach. Obviously, the coach is accountable for some of it. But I don't know. I think maybe people took that decision in game 2 and applied that to the entire body of John Schneider's work, which maybe isn't fair. But I also really, really dislike that move. So I'm torn on that one. Look, he's managed for a year and a half. I think probably he should get more runway to evaluate. But I was a little surprised that all the pieces are back this year, with the exception of Luis Rivera, who retired, and Dave Hudgens, who is like mystery reassigned in the organization. But like hitting coach back, pitching coach back, manager back, bench coach back, GM back. I'm a little surprised there wasn't more turnovers somewhere.
For me, so Jordan Hicks is a guy we traded from the deadline. Is there like a number one priority to bring him back, or is that like, if you could just do it, just do it? If not, there's no real issue.
Yeah, I don't think they'd spend big on him. Like if it's a short term deal, maybe. But this front office has never really spent big on like a long term deal for a reliever because relievers are so volatile. And like earlier in the year, Jordan Hicks was like almost getting DFA'd. I think they believe in their ability to just like trade for the next Jordan Hicks if they need to. They enter the offseason with like a pretty deep bullpen on paper. Look, I'd like to have him back, but this is not a front office that's going to give like a 3-year $45 million deal to a reliever, like a 3-year 36 to a reliever.
Okay, so Chapman is obviously they're trying to bring him back. I'm not sure if we're fans of really paying him all that money. Like you said, very weak free agency class. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, it was interesting to hear through reporting that he turned down like $100 million offer before the season. I think that's one he probably regrets a little bit here, given how his season went. Look, I'd be fine with Chapman coming back, but like I don't. He's 30, and similar to what I was saying about relievers, like this front office has not done super risky long-term deals. They've paid guys. They paid George Springer. That was a long-term deal. They knew they'd be paying him into his mid-30s. They've paid some starting pitchers, but they haven't, like Matt Chapman would become, I think, the second highest paid player on the team at the contracts that are being talked about for him. And to pay a 30-year-old coming off of 5 really bad months, that kind of money over 4 years, I'd just be surprised if this front office does it. There's also this weird thing where like all of their closest prospects to the majors play third base. Like none of them are like elite at third base, but Barger, Schneider, Aurelvis Martinez, Damiano Parmigiani, all those guys play third base. So maybe they would rather just like see who clicks in spring training rather than pay Chapman. And then you use that money on, another outfielder or a second baseman or something like that.
All right, going a little bit MLB wide here. What's your projection of where will Ohtani end up?
I want to say Toronto so bad. Look, I'll guess the Dodgers because they're West Coast, they're big market, they've got tons and tons of money, and they always are players and free agents. I think it's the safest bet probably. I like the Dodgers, but it would be a little disappointing. I want to see him. Honestly, for you guys, I would love to see him in Seattle too if he's not going to go to Toronto. Like another.
No, we're Jays fans, so we don't want that.
Oh, okay. I thought for proximity, like you could go down and see him a little more often or whatever.
We're this one. We're strict Jays fans for sure.
Okay.
Diehard Jays fans.
Okay, then yeah, probably the Dodgers. Keep it in the NL if you're not going to Toronto.
Yeah.
Okay. Biggest name or names you think that could get traded in the offseason? That you may have an eye around the league. Like, I don't know, Nolan or Ronaldo came in my head a little bit, but I don't know how realistic that would be, especially with the Jays somehow being a potential spot.
He's so this name is like, he's not quite the level he was once, but similar to what I was saying earlier about teams that might need to shed salary, I could really see Milwaukee trading away Christian Yelich, who was, a borderline MVP candidate not that long ago. He's fallen off a little bit, and like he's a good left fielder, but with a bad arm. So he's not like an obvious fit for lots of teams, but that's a pretty big name I could see getting moved.
Okay. Last thing before we close it out here, your just general reaction to the new rules that happened in baseball this year.
I thought they were great.
Yeah,
I love the stolen base. I one of the like obviously people frame me as an analytics guy, but one of the analytics things I have not liked over the years is the deprioritization of the stolen base. I love catcher play, so getting to find out a little bit more about which catchers control the run game well, which pitchers control the run game well. I thought the stolen base element really added something this year, and then the pitch clocks are, you don't notice it as much, like pitch to pitch really, and then you look at the end of the game and you were at the ballpark for 25 less minutes. I think that's a positive. Like, obviously I'm a baseball diehard, I'll sit at the park for 4 hours, I don't really care, but for attracting casual fans, getting families out to the ballpark and stuff like that, I think it's a really good move, and I think I read that they're going to trim it even further for this coming season. So I think that'll making the game a little more snappier, a little zippier, and having more, high excitement plays like the stolen base is good for the game. Makes for a better product.
Are you fan for it in the playoffs though?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I think, you know, playoff games still slowed down a little bit because lots of pitching changes and pinch hitting and stuff like that. Everyone uses every time out. I think it's too risky to have a different set of rules for the playoffs.
All right, sounds good. All right, Blake, we appreciate you once again for hopping on with us.
Wait, I thought you had a WWE question.
That was the WWE question.
The
that
Draymond
Oh,
one.
the Draymond one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you want to talk about the Canada GOAT, we have that lying down if you have time
No,
for
I'm
it.
good, man. I'm good on that one.
But yeah, no, we appreciate you once again for hopping on. Before we let you go though, you could just promote your stuff? Where can people find you? Yeah, your shows and all that stuff.
Yeah, so this year for Raptors coverage, I mean, I'm writing a little bit at sportsnet.ca, but I joined William Liu's Raptor show with him and Alex Wong for the year. So that's on 2 hours every day on radio or podcast or TV if you have Sportsnet 360. That's been a lot of fun so far. And then whenever the Raptors are done, Jays Talk Plus will be back, as far as I know, as a 2-hour Jays radio show for the summer as well.
All right, everything will be linked down below along with his Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, no, Blake, once again, we appreciate you for coming on with us. And for everybody else watching, we appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.